Starlo here. I absolutely love fishing. It's so much fun, but it's even more fun when you actually catch something like this thumping big bream that I just landed. And my aim in this series is to teach you exactly how to do that. Now, in the last part, we looked at putting your reel on your rod and filling it up with line. This time, I'm going to teach you two simple but strong knots and also show you some highly effective bait fishing rigs. But first of all, I want to get this beauty back in the water where it belongs so that maybe one day you can catch it. But if you're going to catch big fish like that, you'll have to be able to tie strong knots. And that's what I'm going to teach you right now. I'm going to use a really big hook and some thick, brightly coloured string so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to start off with one of the simplest knots of all. It's called the half blood knot. Take the hook, the lure, or whatever it is that you want to tie on and pass the end of your line through its eye. Pull some line through. Give yourself a reasonable amount to work with. We call this bit of line the tag end. Next, take that tag end and wrap it around your main line 5 times. Count them off. Then take the end of the tag and poke it back through the little loop just above the hook. Now, grab the tag end with your fingers and hold onto it while you pull gently on the main line to start tightening the knot. At this point, it's really important to give the partly tightened knot a lick to lubricate it with saliva. Otherwise, when you pull it tight, the line can partially melt itself and it might break easily later on. Just give it a little lick, being careful to keep the hook away from your face and your mouth, and then start to pull it tight. Look, if you don't like the sound of that, you can use water, but trust me, spit's better. Okay, with the knot lubricated, we can pull it tight. Make sure it snugs right up against the eye of the hook, and then give it a good test by pulling firmly on the main line. If it's going to slip undone or break, you want to find out now, not when you hook a big fish. Once it's tight, you can use scissors to trim the tag, but don't cut it too short. Leave a couple of millimeters. And there you go. That's a half blood knot. It's simple and quick to tie and it's pretty strong, but we can make it a little bit better. I'll show you how. To do it and to tie what's called an improved blood knot, we simply pass the end of our line through the hook eye twice instead of just once. This forms a double loop, as you can see here. Pinch this double loop between your fingers and then wrap the tag end around the main line 5 times, exactly the same as we did with the standard half blood knot. Count those wraps and make sure there's 5. Then it's really important to poke the tag back through both loops above the eye of the hook. Grab the tag end and pull gently on the main line to start tightening the knot, but not too much. Once again, we need to give the partly tightened knot a lick to lubricate it with saliva. That'll do the job. Remember, you can use water if you want to. Once the knot's lubricated, we can tighten it right up. Pull firmly on the main line and even pull on the tag a bit if you need to, or push the wraps down with your fingers. It's important to tighten the knot up completely. You can see why it's stronger than the ordinary blood knot. It's all about this double loop through the eye. Finally, trim the tag end if it's too long, but leave a couple of millimeters to allow for slippage. This is a great knot. It's quite a bit stronger than the standard half blood knot. You can get by for a lot of your fishing life with just the half blood knot and the improved half blood knot. But I want to show you one more knot before we move on to some rigs. It's called the uni knot or the grinner, and it's a really good knot that forms the basis of an entire knot tying system. But it is a little bit trickier to tie than the half blood, so watch carefully. To tie the uni knot, we pass the tag end through the eye, just as before, but now we pull some more line through. You need a bit to work with. At this point, I actually find it easier to swap the hook over into the other hand. You need to lay the tag end alongside the main line like this, and then form a backhand loop in the tag end. Can you see what I did there? There's my backhand loop. Next, take the tag and wrap it through the backhand loop and around the main line. You need to do this at least 4 times in light line, and 5's even better. Count them off. To start tightening the uni knot, you'll need to pull on the hook end and both the tag and the main line. Make sure all the wraps of line close up evenly and smoothly. At this point, yep, you guessed it, we need a bit of spit or water to lubricate the knot. And don't be afraid to just lick these two strands near the hook as well to help it slide down. Now we can tighten the knot up. With the knot well lubricated, we can keep pulling and tighten it right down. But here's a neat trick. You can actually stop at this point and end up with a little loop at the hook eye. This is really handy when you're tying on lures or flies because the loop gives them a great action that fish love. If you don't want a loop knot, just keep pulling on the main line until the uni knot locks against the hook eye. Give it a good test with a firm pull, then take your scissors and trim the tag end off, leaving a couple of millimeters. And that's the uni knot. Like I said, it's a little bit trickier to learn, but it's very strong, and that loop trick is a beauty. Okay, now that we know some good knots, we can start to build some rigs to catch fish on bait. And believe it or not, we've already made the first of them. As simple as that, just a hook tied to the end of a line. No, not a great big hook like this, tied to the end of a bit of bright string, but something like this. A small hook tied on some light line. And believe it or not, if you don't have to cast very far and the fish aren't down very deep in the water column, this is one of the best rigs that you can possibly use. But when you're casting it, just be gentle so you don't flick the bait off the hook. Now, sometimes you will need to cast a bit further or get your bait down in the water column, so you'll need to add a sinker, but you can just slide one onto the line before you tie the hook on. That simple rig with a sinker running right down onto the hook is an absolute beauty. And most of the time, the sinker sitting there won't scare the fish away, but if you're worried that it might, we can move on to the next running sinker rig. And that's this one. It simply consists of a small swivel with the sinker running freely on the main line above it, and anything from 20 to about 50 centimetres of line between the swivel and the hook. You've now got to tie 3 knots, but it's still quite a simple rig. And you might remember from part 1 we learnt that you're definitely going to catch more fish if you use the smallest sinker you can get away with. So try and use a little sinker, and if you do need a bit more weight, just add a second sinker to the rig rather than a great big one. This rig is one of the most popular in Australia, and for a good reason. It catches fish under a wide range of circumstances. So now I've taught you a couple of simple but strong knots and a handful of basic but effective bait fishing rigs. We are so nearly ready to go and catch that fish, but first we better put some bait on our hooks, and that's what the next part is all about. But before that, I want you to go away and practice these knots until you can almost tie them with your eyes closed. Until then, tight lines.